Blessed good evening to one and all. This evening I will do a video with St. Luke's Church, which is at Brighton in St. George, nestled in the midst of cane fields in this beautiful country district here in Barbados, at Brighton in St. George. St. Luke's Anglican Church, Anglican Episcopal Church. This is the final remains. This church bears the final remains of my grandmother, which is my father's mother, and my uncle. My father is from St. George. For those of you who don't know who my father is, Satch Moore, that sings or that used to sing years ago with the Sand Pebbles group, is my father, and he is from St. George. So this is St. Luke's Church. I will take a walk to extend the video. I will take a walk down to the Brighton Farmers Market and overlook the St. George Valley. So this is where the rectory was, the St. Luke's Rectory. The vicarage was demolished from here in 2005 after it was being in a state of disrepair. There was a saying that the priest used to be afraid to live here because of its isolated position. There is no house around the church. So the priests, majority of them, had to abandon the rectory and live in their own homes or in a rented home. The last priest that lived here was the Reverend Walter Henry Fairweather, who was a priest here from 1957 until 1969. They used to keep fairs here when the rectory was here. I don't think they keep fairs there anymore. So St. Luke's Church dates back to the year 1830. Unfortunately, the gate is locked. Otherwise, I would have taken you through the churchyard. Let you guys see around the churchyard. This current priest put a lock on the church gate so that persons cannot venture in the church when it is closed. Years ago, you could have walked through the church, walk around the church, even though it is closed. So, St. Luke's Church is known for its super centenarian, James Sisnet, who was laid to rest here. His grave is right here, the tallest one in the middle. James Emmanuel Sisnet. He was a super centenarian, died in 2013 at the age of 113. He was born in 1900 and died in 2013. And also another centenarian by the name of Sylvester Burton, who will be 104 this year. He's also alive. He's still alive, I believe. Haven't heard about his death yet. He celebrated his 100th anniversary in 2022. And he could still drive. He drove his car to the minister's residence to get his award for the centenarian award. He drove his Toyota Corolla, his white 100, AE100 Toyota Corolla. He still drives it at 102 now, and still driving. We've driven it all the last year. So this is the church cemetery. This is the beautiful country church, St. Luke's. This way back up to Upper Brighton, and back to Draxall and Melbourne, and back to Ellerton. This is where the old St. Luke's Girls' School was. This green building is, which is now used by the Barbados Vocational Training Board for skills, persons to get skills after school, school leavers. St. Luke's Church dates back to 1830. This is another historic church in Barbados. My father went to school at St. Luke's Boys, and it was down here. For those of you who don't know who my father is, Satch Moore, that sings or that used to sing years ago with the Sand Pebbles group, is my father, and he is from St. George. St. Luke's Brighton Primary School. The school amalgamated with the boys and the girls in 1979, a Form 1 school. the play facility for the children. St. Luke's Church. So St. Luke's Church sits in the midst of cairns. This is all the cairns here. Here is a very quiet area. So this is the primary school, St. Luke's Brighton. My father would have attended school here. St. Luke's Boys. And you can see the back of the churchyard over here as well. So we're heading to Lower Brighton now, with the college Savannah and Society bus supposed to travel. Then back at the church and school. So St. Luke's is a beautiful country church in the heart of Barbados. Nestled between cairns. St. George was carved out of St. Michael between 1640 and 1641. So St. Michael is the mother parish and St. George was carved out of it. St. George is the breadbasket parish, the parish that fed many Barbadians from the 1630s up until this present day. St. George is the parish known for our land and fertile soil. Walking down to the bottom of the road now. The church back up this way. Over here is Windsor St. George. So this is the Lower Brighton now. This way will lead you back up to Draxall with Boyd's Mill and Melbourne and St. George, and back to St. Philip and St. John to the east of the island. So we'll lead you back to St. Philip with Church Village, Ebenezer, Chapel, back to the prison side, that way. That part of St. Philip with the prison, the Church Village, Chapel, Ebenezer, Burton, Edgecombe, That part of St. Philip. Over here is Windsor, St. George. So this way back at St. Philip and St. John. And back to St. George, there's Boyd's Mill, French's, Melverton, and Draxhall. And this way back down to the Brighton Farmers Market, back down to Buckley Sugar Factory, the now defunct Buckley Factory. And this way back to St. Luke's Church. So Buckley is this way. Buckley in this parish is spelled Bulkley, and it is pronounced as Buckley, not Bulkley. It is Buckley. Buckley Factory. Buckley Factory shut down in 2002, and it is still in better condition than Andrew's Factory, which recently closed down about 10 years ago. Andrew's Factory in the state had the equipment taken out and so on. Buckley is in a better position than Andrew's. Even though they don't make cane no more there, they still have it looking a certain way. So before I close, before I go any further, you can see St. Luke's Church up in here and the school. So this is Windsor Tenantry over here, Windsor Borders, St. George and Christchurch. Windsor Borders, St. George and Christchurch. Windsor Borders, St. George and Christchurch. So in this case, one part of the area is in St. George and one is in part of it in Christchurch. From that whole stretch coming up South District right through Borders Hall and Windsor till you get into St. Philip, that part is in, one part is in Christchurch and one is in St. George. All the cane fields here, farmland. They look like a lot of St. Philip people use this road to get home. People that live in Chapel and Church Village and Ebenezer and Edgecombe onto the top of St. Philip, which is to the east side, uses this road to get home. And a part of St. John too. So St. Philip and St. John to the east can be accessible from this section, this road here. So this is Windsor Tenantry through there. Heading now to the Brighton Farmers Market. Of farmland, the rain, look at this, it's about to starting to fall. This is a gully thing here, a gully over here. want to take out my umbrella out of my bag because the rain is falling. No, I ain't really gonna stop me. So I have this to use. Unless it gets that bad, where you have no choice but to seek shelter, I will walk ahead. Use this. Then back up Brighton Road. Yes. All the cane field, then back up to St. Luke's Church. Now approaching the Brighton Farmers Market, which is at the Brighton Plantation in St. George. Back to the Brighton Farmers Market. The Brighton Farmers Market. So Brighton Plantation and Farmers Market here. This is the Brighton Plantation and Farmers Market. This way to take you back to Upper Brighton, back to Ellerton and Waverley Court. Up here. And this way back to either Windsor Road, the front part of Windsor Road, and back into Christ Church to the south. Or we take you back to Buckley Factory, Manning's Village, Constant, and back to Bridgestone. This is the Brighton Farmers Market here. Yeah. So this is the Brighton Farmers Market, open every Saturday. A lot of rich people do their shopping there on Saturday mornings. And I must say that I like the view. Hold up a little bit. So you know, whenever I come this way, I just stand up in this spot here and look down at the St. George Valley. So this way back to Buckley Sugar Factory, back to Bridgetown, where Constant, Buckley, Bottles, and back to Salters and back to Bridgetown. Down this way. All to St. George. You can see all the Christ Church. You can see all across the Windsor Road, which is Highway 5 where the Barefield bus travels. So south of the island, you can St. George and Christchurch from here, and a bit of St. Philip as well. So thank you guys for watching now, and do have a blessed and a wonderful blessed and a wonderful good evening. Beautiful countryside. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I'm gone. See you later.